Coming up on the podcast, Belouis Some with 5 of his best.
It's my song. I'm really proud. It's my legacy, but it hasn't dated. We think we met in the 80s. It was just the most amazing afternoon. I remember it really clearly. And I came back on Tuesday morning, gave it to EMI and said, there's your hit record. You know, music press hated me. Absolutely hated me. So in the UK, the rest of the world, they were cool. They got it. The music was the music. You know, I'm going out to play these tracks to anyone who wants to listen as well as I possibly can.
Just a few seconds to tell you to subscribe to this channel, and then you'll find out immediately when I post something new. Okay, let's get into it now. Here's Belouis Some, 5 of his best. So Nev, Belouis Some, welcome. We're doing 5 of the best today, but before we get to the top 5, you're going on an American tour. Now, how did this come about?
Well, you know, Steve, because we've chatted in the past, that it was something I really wanted to do. I wanted to be playing live again, and then COVID came and all that, you know, and it disrupted everything in everyone's lives, and so my agent Rick in New York, you know, I'm really pushy, you know, so I'm like, what have you got? What have you got? What have you got? And then, you know, things came up and then they cancelled and ideas. And then he came up with this, which is so much more exciting for me than this tour with The Alarm and Gene Loves Jezebel is so much more exciting than just an 80s festival thing, you know. So it's a real rock and roll tour. It's 40 dates. It's the whole of America. I'm thrilled.
So have you been getting a band together? Is it the same band as before?
No. I didn't have anything. Remember, I haven't done this for a long time. So, you know, I didn't know what to do about anything. So I've got a band, an American band, who are rehearsing now. 4 great musicians in New York. And I'm going to meet them the day before the first gig.
Oh, wow.
So it's, you know, it's a bit like the Trooping of the Colour, you know, they're doing their bit, I'm doing my bit, and it should all slot together.
You like a bit of a risk.
Yeah, not always, Steve, not always. But just, that's life, isn't it? You know.
Well, let's get on to your top 5. The first track you put down was Imagination. This is a bit of a weird one because after its first release, I mean, it was a bit of a hit, but it wasn't a big hit. But on re-release, after Some People had come out, it got into the UK top 20 and into the Billboard top 100. So tell me about that song, the recording of it, and how that became a hit.
Well, I mean, the first thing that everyone who's listening to this podcast should realize that 80s chart positions are totally irrelevant. It was how long a song was or an album was around for, because you know, you didn't start getting the straight in at number ones until the end of the 90s. Well, basically the 90s, when they had to, because they could go to radio 6 weeks before. In my day, I think you were allowed 10 days before it was released. Otherwise, radio pulled it. So if you can remember back, chart positions are irrelevant. So they go to radio doesn't pick up on it. They release the track, nothing happens. They'll pull it because they don't want to waste a great track that has spent a year recording. So that's why a lot of the classic songs, you know, don't even make the charts. Real classics as well by really big acts. So, what happened with Imagination? I looked at my notes because I'm obviously doing live stuff, and I think Imagination was one of the songs I got my recording deal from, by the way. I just throw that one in. I recorded a demo in Bath with it, with I think the guys from Tears for Fears, Roland and Kurt. I think, because I can't remember any of this. I'm just thinking back, looking at the notes. Then I recorded it in London, and it horrible. And then, as you know, I met these guys in New York, and they wanted to start producing. They'd been doing 12-inch mixes and dance mixes, and they'd done Talk, and they'd done a few American things, and they were pretty good. Michael Barbiero, Steve Thompson. And, you know, I said, well, will you re-record my track for me? And they said, well, yeah, and we're working with Carlos Alamo. Do you want to work with Carlos? I said, of course I want to work with Carlos. And he wants to work with Bernard Edwards from Chic and Tony Thompson. So why don't we try it? And then we had to persuade EMI in London to let me do it, which we sort of, luckily Dave Ambrose, the A&R guy, that was amazing. So I went to New York and it was done in a Saturday afternoon in the rain. I remember in October, I was very nervous. Rattled off, live vocal. It was just the most amazing afternoon. I remember it really clearly. And I came back on Tuesday morning, gave it to EMI and said, there's your hit record. You know?
Oh, brilliant. I mean, for a Bowie fan, it must have been amazing working with those guys.
Well, we were all, you know, we were all Bowie fans and we were all, well, Bernard Edwards, I don't think he'd ever worked with Bowie. I don't think any of them had worked with Bowie.
Carlos had, yeah.
Yeah, Carlos was, you know, missed, you know, everything. You know, Carlos, even if he wasn't picked at the beginning of a project, would tell you that he'd get a call from David saying, Carlos, what are you doing next week? You know, one of those. Never knew in advance.
Wow.
So anyway, I've sidetracked. So imagination, but we knew that it had to be, and we went to I tell you what we did. The night we mixed it on the Sunday night, we went out in New York and Steve took it to Area, which was the biggest, the most amazing club. You remember, dance club of all time in New York, like an old warehouse that it's now in a posh area, but in those days it was pretty dodgy downtown. And he gave it to the DJ and the DJ just slotted it in and everyone just carried on dancing. So we knew we had a hit. And it sounded a bit different anyway, Imagination, I think, doesn't sound like anything, which is what confused back to when it was released in the UK. The UK was a hit everywhere else in the world, just the UK had to be re-released. Like everything in the UK, we slag it off until it happens and then we say it's ours, you know? So...
but also the video really impacted on this track, didn't it? And that was a really clever move.
Well, that was Paul Barrow, and the Barrow brothers were my publishers, and they'd originally signed me up, and they were Duran Duran's music company. They had the Rum Runner in Birmingham, and they had been integral in Duran Duran, everything about Duran Duran in those days. And then, so Paul Barrow had said, "Oh, we've got to do something different." I know. Well, Storm Thorgerson, who was Hypnosis, who'd designed and done all the artwork for Led Zeppelin, Pink Floyd. I mean, a legend in design and artwork and everything that happened. You know, I mean, so much of what we do now is Storm Thorgerson, you know, and Hypnosis. And so he did the video, but he was a bit of a character. I mean, he was. We went to Storm, and he was quite moody. And I think Paul said, listen, this is what we want to do. And I think he liked the idea that we were doing something that no one had really done before. I mean, it was a full frontal nudity and you know, it was, and also we shot the video around the 12-inch, not the 7-inch, which drove the record company mad. And they launched it at Studio 54 in New York, and it was a big event. And of course, MTV couldn't even play the actual proper version of the video, but it gave me an oomph in all the clubs around the world because they'd play it all night because it had girls running around, and well, they weren't really running around, but it was quite moody, wasn't it? It was, you know,
it's one of those songs that, I mean, even over time, it still sounds really fresh. And what's interesting about it, it's had a bit of 9 lives, hasn't it? Because the Beloved released it in '94, and then of course recently you had that tech house version with Lee Rose, which was amazing.
I mean, as a rule, it hasn't worked when anyone's done it, but I do like I like Lee's version. I think the tech house one's great, and that got a really good reaction in the clubs. I mean, it was a club hit, but it's really moody and dark, and I mean, isn't it? It's sort of like real horror film stuff. It's sci-fi, I think, but it never worked for remix. The original mix for the classic version, not Lee's version, but the classic version is the original. It's never worked when anyone's tried. I mean, that's Imagination, and it hasn't. It's my song. I'm really proud. It's my legacy, but it hasn't dated.
No,
it's just it is what it is. You know. The lyrics are a bit weird, you know, don't know what they mean. Well, I do. I'm not telling you. Anyway.
That's like being ragged to a bull. You do know
Yeah,
that, don't
no. But you know, the lyrics in a song are what they are to the listener, aren't they? Really, I think.
you? Yeah. I mean, the second song that was on the list was "Some People," which Storm Thorgerson also
Yeah, but
directed.
this stage, stop. And have you noticed all the songs on my list of top fives are mine? I mean, that's the you have no.
Yeah, no, of course, that was the idea.
I know. I felt, you know, that's why I delayed it because I thought I can't do my own songs. But anyways, no, some people, but I mean, a lot of people didn't get Some People. You know, that was banned as well in a lot of places because they thought I was some kind of weirdo. I mean, people have got really, it's that sort of Twitter thing before Twitter, isn't it? People got really weird minds. And went to Storm and said, Storm, we got the song Some People, which is not, you know, I mean, the some people that, you know, I was just about to swear, but some, you know, it's not a lightweight poppy, oh, we're going to have fun in the park song. It's quite a cynical song, some people, but it went to Storm and said, let's do it. And the video for that is pretty weird as well, in Aldborough in Suffolk, and with the kids and the dancing and the weird sort of Pied Piper thing, and Swatch came on board by then, and anyone who was around in the 80s would know that Swatch was a revolution. I mean, it you know, before that you got to watch, you know, when you reached a certain age, or you got granddad's watch or whatever. A watch was a big deal. Swatch revolutionized that, you know, $20, waterproof, perfect time, you know, I mean, and fashionable, and you could have 3 or 4 watches. And Swatch sponsored me for the American tour that I did with Frankie Goes to Hollywood, and I did Swatch live in New York with them. But more importantly, they had that as running as a TV commercial in North America for a year, and that was and now I'm doing lots of press for the tour, and people all remember the Swatch commercial, which is the Some People video.
Was that like filmed exactly the same time? You did different excerpts for Swatch, or did they?
Yes, I mean, and sometimes I post on Instagram, which you can all follow if you'd like, Belouis Some, and you can see I put it up sometimes as you could swatch yourself. And I remember, you know, I was obviously I'm trying to be cool when I'm 20 whatever, and in the 80s. Now, you know, I think it's funny, but it took hours for me to go, you better swatch yourself, you know, and that was the commercial, you know.
I mean, one thing that's a little bit weird about the track, and I always find this when an artist releases a track and at the same time another artist releases that artist's track, and it happened with you with Murray Head, the one night.
Yeah, I was very upset. I was very upset. I mean, I was like, well, what's going on? Why can he do that? Of course, looking back, you know, making a difference, does it? I mean, but yes, it was a bit of a weird one. But I guess, and you know, Cliff Richards had Some People. I was very upset about that. Paul Young's had one. I think Some People's one of those, you know, and now Some People is definitely doing promotion. Is the track in the US that people remember me for, which sort of puts me in the wrong box, really, because I'm not really such a lightweight poppy act. I looked it, but I was pretty much a rock and roll, you know, monster. I wasn't running, you know, I wasn't one of those sweet, but EMI were desperate. They didn't know what to do with me. That's why a name like Belouis Some and you know, cutesy look and blonde hair, I think they didn't know how to market me. And I think it's one of the reasons that things weren't as successful or as big as they could have been, you know. I think if they'd marketed me properly, I was playing live the whole time, every club, you know, everywhere I could. I wasn't really such a sweetheart.
Also, at that period, the music was sort of in flux in, you know, the popular music. So that was also difficult, because to have longevity, it's like it's really difficult if you come through at a particular period.
Yeah.
And I think that also played into that for you.
Yeah, and also the music press didn't know what to do with me because I wasn't particularly political. I didn't like to go out and spout. And remember, that was very trendy in mid 80s. You had to do that. and I wasn't doing a red wedge and all that nonsense, and I wasn't anti-Thatcher, and I wasn't, maybe I was, but I wasn't spouting it with my music. And so that the music press hated me, absolutely hated me. So in the UK, the rest of the world, they were cool. They got it. The music was the music. But in the UK, I mean, it was horrible. But I mean, like, I didn't give a toss. I was beginning of it. The EMI the press department didn't like it. I didn't care.
So number 3 on your list is Round Round. And this, of course, was on Pretty in Pink, which was written by John Hughes, who'd written The Breakfast Club, and directed by Howard Deutsch. So how did that come about?
Well, and again, that's more for our US friends than in the UK, because that's the Breakfast Club and Pretty in Pink and 16 Candles are part of that 80s culture. So if you grew up and if you're 40s or 50s or whatever, that is part of you growing up, like Swatch, and it's never been as big in Europe, I don't think. But so what happened was, Breakfast Club had come out. John Hughes had already made so many great music, and he was a genius anyway. I mean, before, when he was in advertising, he'd done really iconic McDonald's ads, I think, and things like that. So the guy was a genius. And I actually got a phone call from John Hughes, and I got the script. And could you write a bit? I mean, so I wrote Round for the movie, which is, I don't think any of the other songs in the movie are actually written for the movie. And but I was touring and I was really busy, and I was, I think trying to re-release Some People or Imagination to get it, and I remember I was in EMI, had a little demo studio in Manchester Square. I was with my guys that I was working with, and Chester Kamen and all that lot. And the song was, we put it together, a demo, I think, in an afternoon, sent it off. I never really thought much of the song. By the way, now I love it, and it sounds amazing live. But now, and then the next thing, I got a phone call. You've got to go to America next week. Oh, and Bernard Edwards is doing it, and Tony Thompson. So I was working as with Bernard producing, and it was between 2 concerts. So I remember having to go to the American Embassy in the morning, get a visa, get on the plane in the afternoon, go to Los Angeles that day, sing it the next day, come back that night and do a concert at the Marquee. I remember I was a bit spaced out, but went in, did my vocal, didn't think anything of it until it came out. Well, someone said the movie's coming out, but it wasn't. It's become a legacy thing, like Imagination. It's become part of my story, Yeah,
it's weird that you say that you wrote the lyrics for the film, because hearing the music, I didn't actually know that, and hearing the music, I thought, wow, this is so.
It was
right.
Hard.
Yeah,
it was hard. It was really hard, and I was not. I thought I'd done a terrible job, and now I've been through the multi-tracks for the track, right? And because they put the demo in the movie, I think they put the Bernard Edwards cleaned up version on the soundtrack, which was platinum, or I think maybe even double platinum in the States. I mean, it's Rolling Stone says it's one of the top 25 album soundtracks of all time. I think it's number 11. So I'm really proud of this now. But I've been through what we originally recorded, and we've stripped it back, and that's what we're doing live. And I think it's going to be absolutely amazing for the first time in its life.
Don't go away. There's more of Belouis Some with 5 of his best coming up. But before that, I want to ask you to subscribe. Yeah, you know it. Just click the button. You'll hear when I post something new on the site, and a bit more information this time. Belouis Some has already been on 2 interviews on this channel. One is a 1-hour-long career interview. It's a fabulous interview. It's really fun, and you really find out a lot about this really interesting, fascinating man. So let's get back to him, Belouis Some.
Remember, I'm 64. I mean, most people are thinking of dying. I'm getting in the back of a van and doing 40 cities around the US with my band. And also I've got to talk about the alarm. I mean, this guy, Mike Peters, is just the most incredible guy. I don't know whether we think we met in the 80s. He did a Queen.
That's the typical 80s. We think we met in the 80s. Yeah. How many people say that lived in the 80s?
Well, I mean, because I've looked at the documentary evidence. I mean, he did Queen's. They did the Alarm did Wembley with Queen. Obviously, I was doing the Queen too. I didn't do Wembley, but I went to all the parties. So I must have met the geezer. He is just legendary. He's an amazing guy. I mean, so much work, and also his cancer charities and his. Have you met Mark Peters?
No.
You have to. I'm going to introduce you. The guy is, and he's. I mean, he should be running the country. He's just incredible. I've never met a more forceful, organized artist in my life. He's really cool. So anyway, that's what I've sidetracked. The Alarm. What were we talking about?
Well, it's going to move on to number 4 on your list.
Oh, right. Okay.
Which was it co-written by Carlos?
Yes. Yeah. Well, Carlos had been instrumental in everything I did. I went back with the rest of my first album to New York and Steve Thompson. We re-recorded most of it, or fiddled with most of it. And Carlos was there. I mean, Carlos was in every session I ever did in America for 2 albums. He arranged them. He was a very positive force, and also his wife, Robin Clark. I mean, I could see why I knew why people wanted having Carlos around. I mean, not only an incredible talent, but a very positive force. And so he'd been instrumental. And the second album I went back and did with Gary Langham, produced it, and Guy Fletcher from Dire Straits, with Mark Knopfler. He does a lot now, and got that fantastic charity record out with the guitars, with 160 guitar legends on it at the moment. And Jeff Dugmore, Carmine Rojas, the Borneo Horns, and Chester came, and we did this album as a band in New York for the second album. And Some Girls was a lovely, gentle, Some Girls Are Worth Waiting For, and it was beautiful, but it was not complete. And so Carlos and I, we worked on it, and we worked on it over about 3-month period, a little bit here and a little bit there. And it's so gentle and smooth, and, it's a beautiful song. Most people haven't heard it, but I think you will, because in the future, I'm going to make more of Some Girls. But it was very special because I don't normally write with people. I'm not very good at it.
I mean, it's a really nice song. Is it written about anyone in particular?
I'm sure it was. I mean, the thing about all songs, most of my songs were written about, I think you talk to most songwriters, they pick a bit from here and they pick a bit from there, and emotion from there. And I've suddenly realized, after doing this for about 45 years, that actually my songs, they're about people and emotions. I'm not really very good about writing about things, I mean, it's about people, isn't it? I think the most important thing in the world is people, what we're feeling, So that's a nice song.
Absolutely. And number 5 on your list is Jerusalem, which I think was in 1986. And I read a review today, an old review, and it said that it's like Belouis Some has recruited Bowie on vocals. I mean, it's all positive. It's elaborate and epic.
I forgot it was released in a single in some countries. I've forgotten all this, by the way. And I parked that song for years. I did. And then if I look at the comments and things, it's always a lot of people's favorite song, that and Target Practice or whatever, or Imagination or whatever. But Jerusalem comes up all the time. And the reason I didn't do it was so hard to do live, because you're banging away in a live set and you're crashing and noise and pace, and then you plonk in this epic in the middle. I'm doing it live, lock, stock and barrel in this set, and it sounds beautiful. Again, stripped it back, found the bits that. Now, what happened was I had the song. It's also it was difficult to do live because it's very raw, and you're singing this vocal, and in the old days, it was very rock and roll. We were usually pissed. And suddenly to do this big epic song. Also, I smoked 40 cigarettes a day, and it was really hard to do this beautiful song that you've got to get right, you know? So I didn't do it. And but so what had happened was when I first went in the studio and I met Guy Fletcher, who I, you know, worked with again for the two albums that mattered, and Chester Kamen, we fiddled, and every night when we'd done whatever else we were doing, we'd put Jerusalem back up. And we'd fiddle and just add these textures and layers. And this was something I learned from Guy, that, you know, it's all about, you don't have to have too much in something, but everything has to do something. Everything has to mean something. And, you know, and it's just the feeling. And that's what Jerusalem was. And it obviously meant a lot to me when I wrote it. I wrote it, I think, in 1984 or whatever. And I mean, I think in those days, yeah, my voice was, you know, obviously more Bowie-esque than it turned out. I recorded the vocal then, 1984. So it would have been more stylized, I guess.
What's really fascinating about any artist from that era is that at the time you liked certain songs, and today you look back and you sort of understand slightly differently, and you look at them differently, and you start to like other songs.
Well, you sort of realize that in fact you were, you know, at the time you were really emotional about stuff, and then you park it and move on. And you go, no, I don't like that. No. And then you go, hang on, wait a minute. Oh, and I remember that, and I remember that, and I remember that. And so for me, yeah, Jerusalem is really special. And also the thing is, I just this with Steve Thompson, I went to New York with Steve, and Steve mixed it. And I remember it was late at night. He used to like start at midnight. And, you know, by that stage, I'm like, wow, I can't, you know. But I always remember, I said, right, you've got to put the strings. The strings have got to be, you know, the strings that you've got to think back to the movie epics that you went to see in Lawrence of Arabia, or one of those big movies, you know, in the screens from the 70s. And it's the strings have got to swamp everything. You can't do that. You can't put the strings like that. No one, you can't do that. Anyway, I forced him to do it. So it's completely washed over with these vast string arrangements that Guy had done. And because we never thought it was going to go anywhere, the song, so we just did it the way we wanted. So about 3 months ago, Steve Thompson emailed me. He said, you know what? It's probably the most interesting mix. Those strings, I'm so glad I did it. You know, it worked.
One of the songs, I mean, we've talked about the 5 that you sent me, but one of the songs you alluded to a moment ago that's not on that list that surprised me was Target Practice.
Well, I was only allowed 5, wasn't I?
Okay. Well, okay. So listen, I'm going to read out the top 5. We've got Imagination, Some People, Round Round, Some Girls, and Jerusalem. What for you?
And Target Practice, if I was allowed another one.
Okay, but what for you is
guitar solo.
What for you is the song that you think really is your favorite Belouis Some song?
The one that I've is my legacy song. The one that I've is my legacy song is Imagination. You know, I mean, that's the one that, you know, has got me through the last 40 years, you know. So, and I love it, and I still love putting up, and I still get shivers when I hear it, you know, when you hear that breakdown. And I mean, and I defy anyone to not like Imagination. If you don't like Imagination, you don't like music. It's real. It is what you might hate me. I'm fine, you know, I don't give a toss. But you can't ignore Imagination because of the people who created it on a Saturday afternoon in October in New York in 1984, in one or two takes. That, you know, I mean, a lot of them are not with us anymore. The keyboard player, I think, Jack, you know, died of someone. I mean, I think I can't remember. Jimmy Malin played percussion. He's not with us anymore. The backing singers, I mean, some of those, you know, it's just. It sums up a moment.
That's fantastic. You told me before that there was a point in your life where you walked away from the music business and you started a completely new life. Now, it's like the icing on the cake is that you're going back, in a sense, not into the music business, but you're going back on tour and you're coming with a different attitude. What is different about you this time that can enjoy it?
I left the music industry because I had to, because, you know, I couldn't get arrested. I mean, you get through the 80s, everything's going and you're creating. I did, as you know, I did the third album that is not up on the platforms for some strange reason. But I was really proud. That took me 3 years with great people in London, and I was sold. It was soul destroying. And I then actually did the demos for a fourth album, which I think I've told you I found. And but I'm damned if I'm going to go and record them and have them wasted. So I'll sit on them, you know, if one day maybe I'll record them. But what happened was, I still live in central London. I was still seeing people in the industry, but I had to bite my tongue. I had to go, well done, congratulations to lots of my friends, and sit there and take it on the chin that I was, you know, couldn't get arrested. And when when you're a musician, you can carry on and do different projects and whatever. But I was very obviously a solo artist, and a solo artist, how could I disguise myself? I've been called Belouis Some. I can't go and pretend, you know, I'm incognito, I'm someone else. This is what I was. And that was my persona. So I had no choice but to leave the industry and just sit there and go, well done to everyone else. And it was really humiliating. There was no social media. Everyone thought I was dead. Carlos Alamo thought I died. I mean, you know, it was only when we started communicating about 10 years ago on social media that, you know, everyone goes, wow, you're still around, you know, Steve Thompson, where have you been? Yeah, so that answers your question. So I did other things, and but what's different now is I'm not trying to sell records. I'm not trying to keep a record company happy. I'm not trying to, actually, I was pretty stubborn in those days as well. But you know, I'm going out to play these tracks to anyone who wants to listen as well as I possibly can, you know, and I don't want it to end after this tour. I want to carry on. I just want to, you know, take a 35-year chunk out of my life and just carry it on.
Brilliant. Well, good luck with the North American tour with Gene Loves Jezebel and with The Alarm. And a lot of my audience is in America. So whoever's in America can go and see it. Where can they find the dates?
Well, the dates are up sort of on my website, belouissome.com, but mainly The Alarm's got them. They've got all the ticket links as well. I'm still trying to work out how to do all these things, by the way, everyone can do. I can't do, I've never done it before. Ticket links and pre-sales and things. The Alarm have got all the on their website. You can't.
Well, I'll put all the links below so everyone can find them.
Please come along. It's going to be an amazing tour because we're all so different. I mean, you know, it's a real rock and roll tour. You're not, there's not 3 bands that sound the same. I mean, it's going to be fantastic, I think. I'm really excited.
Brilliant. I'm glad, and I'm really pleased for your excitement. So have fun. Don't go as wild as the Frankie Goes to Hollywood.
Those days are over. Those days are over. Yeah. As you know.
Yeah, thank God. Thank God. Nev, thanks a lot. It's been a pleasure, as always, and I'll see you soon.
See you soon, Steve.
Up there is an interview I recommend. Down there is where you can find all the podcast interviews. And here is where you can connect.